Welcome to Think Smart with TMFG, the weekly podcast covering the financial topics that are newsworthy and relevant to everyday Canadians. Hosted by Senior Financial Advisor Mike Connon of the McClellan Financial Group of CI Asante Wealth Management Limited, here is today's episode.
Welcome to Think Smart with TMFG. I'm Mike Connon, and if you're new here, or if you missed the episode 351 with Rob McClellan, this is a new series we have of our Think Smart podcast, where we sit down with clients and talk through what retirement looks like beyond the numbers. If you haven't listened to the launch episode yet, we definitely recommend checking it out. So today I'm joined with a very special client who's been with us for many years, Jonathan van Bilsen, author, photographer, former radio announcer, and someone who's traveled over 107 countries. John, thanks for being here and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate the opportunity.
I think you've been a client of ours for 20 years.
Oh, more than that, I think almost 25.
Yeah. And when I go through and think, okay, what makes someone really interesting to bring on these podcasts is you've had an amazing life of traveling to some really interesting places. And it's become part of, I guess, your whole persona and everything that you are. You've turned it in not only to enjoyment, but into a business and something that keeps you, I wouldn't even call you retired. You seem to be more busy than most people are working.
Absolutely. Well, I think travel is something that everybody enjoys. Most people certainly enjoy travel, and it's something that everybody looks forward to doing because it's more than just going away for a week or two. It's actually planning and thinking about places that you want to go and things like that.
I was going to ask you where you're originally from, but your name is Van Bilsen, so I can take
originally Dutch.
I can take some guesses.
Born and bred in the Netherlands.
So what got you into this travel bucket, and when did it happen? What age did you want us to see in the world?
I'm not sure if I ever was out of it because born in Europe, where everything is so close, when I came to Canada, I was very young, but I had 7 countries under my belt already, just European countries, and thoroughly enjoyed the different elements, the different people, the different social structures and that, and just decided that just loved it.
You can do 7 countries on horseback over there, can't you? I mean, I'm always envious when I watch people, talk to people from Europe because travel is just part of their life.
Absolutely,
right? And it's very cheap.
Very cheap.
They go to one country and the flights are $100.
I know.
Or they can drive or they can take a train. It seems so convenient.
Yeah, I was just talking to my cousin who did a cruise down the Rhine and he drove to the boat. It was about a 35-minute drive.
Yeah.
You know.
Unfortunately, in Canada, we have a bit of a ways to go to get anywhere, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
When you went from work into, we'll call it the retirement mode, what did your travel shift or did you have changes in it?
Not a whole lot. We've always traveled. The difference for me between actually working and retiring is it's just a change in direction. You know, retirement is not sitting around watching Netflix all day long. So it's a shift in direction. And travel, as I said, it's always been a big, big part. And it seems everybody I talk to is very into travel as well.
At what point did you decide to take the travel and turn it into sort of a business? Was it photography? Were you always doing photography?
Pretty much. I mean, photography is certainly a main thrust and travel, to combine the two, is perfect. So to try and find a direction, a niche or something, took me a couple of years to do, but I ended up doing a travel show, as you know, and that ran for 7 years. I put out about 14 travel-related books and also a lot of photographs, and I sell those photographs online and so forth.
I've seen them. They're very good.
Thank you.
It's amazing the different places and what you get to see. I always said envy when I watch these great photographs of these places and what you get to see. It's not only the traveling there, being able to have the eye to be able to grab what you see, you know?
Yeah, a lot of people, and you probably know yourself, like every 100 photos, you get 1 or 2 good ones.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of doing it.
What do you like to photograph the best? Is it scenery, people, animals?
It really depends where I go. So if it's in Africa somewhere, it's obviously animal related. People are always intriguing, but you have to be very careful. You don't want to just stick your camera in somebody's face and snap away. And scenery is usually pretty spectacular. So it's a combination of all of those, depending on where I actually go.
Yeah. I guess you have lots of stories about great experiences travel. You probably have some scary ones too.
I probably do.
Yeah. Anything that comes to mind, anything that was your greatest experience traveling that it made this all worthwhile and you thought this is so fantastic?
I mean, there are definitely lots of stories because things do happen, especially the way I travel. And we just came back from Egypt and we were there 40 years ago. And 40 years ago, I was in the Valley of the Kings and I was actually taking some photographs, not realizing that you need a permit at that time to take pictures.
Yeah.
And this was long before cell phones and that sort of thing. So I just sort of shot from the hip and then somebody started yelling at me, a security guard, and I started running. And two of them started chasing, and I continued to run up into the hills. If you've ever been to the Valley of the Kings or seen pictures of it, it's pretty mountainous. And it was in August, and it was 45 degrees. I remember that very well. And I ran for about a good half hour, and I just dove into an abandoned tomb that was carved out. And finally, they gave it up. And since then, I decided to just buy permits when I needed to.
That's the end of the Raiders of the Lost Ark experience.
Exactly.
You're talking about different types of travel. Like, I heard you give me an idea where there's 4 different types of travel that people do.
Yeah, there might be more, but there's 4 basic travel methods. One, the basic one would be when you book an airplane, you go somewhere, you land, rent a car, get a map, and off you go, and sort of by the seat of your pants. And a lot of times that happens when you're younger, when you're backpacking and so forth. You know, I don't see a lot of 75, 80-year-old people doing that. The second, which is a very, very common way of doing it, is for a couple to hire a tour guide with a car in a local area and planning your trip out ahead of time, which is a lot of fun. So you would look on the internet for other destinations or other companies that would go to certain destinations and follow that route, and then look for hotels, and then get in touch with a travel guide in that location and let them assist you with it and book that. The third would be to go in some sort of a group travel, be it a bus or a small van or whatever, when it's a dozen people or 30 or 40 people. And that is ideal for people who are single, for people who don't want to do a lot of planning, in other words, being sort of looked after when traveling, have somebody take their luggage and so forth and carry it for them and that kind of stuff. And the fourth would be, I think, cruising, a river cruise or an ocean cruise, and which is also has a lot of benefits to it. I think they all have pros and cons.
Yeah, it's a risk-reward thing, I guess, isn't it?
Absolutely.
As usual.
It also depends what you want out of it. Like if you're a real social person and you want to sit and chat with people for dinner all the time and you don't want to unpack every night, then you would do a cruise. It's like going to an all-inclusive that floats.
Have you used some of the new AI, like ChatGPT? Have you used that for travel, or have you?
It's funny you mention that because we're going to just planned a trip to England and just booked it actually. And we want to go and visit some of the smaller villages in Cornwall and Devon in that area.
Yeah.
So I made a list of about 70 of them. And then I went into AI and I said, plot these out in the best possible manner and most efficient routing.
Yeah.
And it did. It spat them out and we sent it off to our guide out there, and he's probably shook his head. 70's a lot.
Yeah. It's a great tool. Mm-hmm. I went down to Brazil a few months ago, and it was great for a lot of things. Some of the stuff was outdated, like restaurants. It sent me to one restaurant that had been closed down for a few months. So you have to be a bit careful on that stuff. But
absolutely.
As generally getting ridden around and things like that, it's actually pretty handy.
It is very handy. I think it's based on the internet, right? And the internet is very handy. The old adage, my grandfather used to say, inspect what you expect.
Yeah.
So make sure you check it out because it's not always 100% accurate.
So if you were to give someone advice on traveling, and you say, okay, I know you mentioned to me that you shouldn't only wait to retirement to travel. Right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, if you're going to Antarctica, you want to do that when you're 60, not when you're 85, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But the key, I think, is to, first of all, make a bucket list of places that you definitely want to go.
Yeah.
And I hear a lot of people say, well, I'm going to do like 8 countries in 4 days because I'll decide, where to go back to and that. And people never go back. So kind of plan it out, decide where you want to go. If Paris is on your list, put it on your list. If Kenya and Tanzania for safari on your list, do it, sort of thing. But plan it at a stage in your life when you're physically able to do it, and financially, of course. Most people, when they get older, they start to degrade slightly in their health, right? Yeah. And a lot of people, they go straight, and then boom, they hit a brick wall. And suddenly their whole life changes, and it's a shock. So definitely plan that out. And I also wanted to touch on insurance.
Yes. Well, I guess the big thing is, the one thing we find with a lot of our clients is when you travel, when you're working, you almost don't think about the medical situation because most people have a work plan that includes travel insurance. So not everyone, but it's usually pretty easy to get. Even credit cards supply reasonable insurance up to certain ages. And that's the fine print they have to read. Many times once you're over 65 or certain ages, they stop that automatic insurance. Yeah. I guess that's crucial in making sure you're okay.
Well, it's very important. A friend of ours worked for an institution their entire life and realized that when they were 75, their travel insurance canceled. The thing with travel insurance, you really need to read this fine print. And I'm not from that industry, so this is strictly from experience. If you have a pre-existing condition, it's not covered.
Yeah.
If you have a change in medication 90 days prior to your trip, that ailment is not covered. So if you're on blood pressure pills, for example, and say 16 milligrams, and a doctor decides to put you up to 24 milligrams 2 weeks before your trip, if you have a a heart or stroke related issue, you will have a real tough time. If you're in a third world country and you end up in a hospital which does not have a lot of modern conveniences and you're sitting there, if you decide to go to a private hospital, your insurance may not cover you. So read the fine print. I took my dad to Europe when he was, I think, 82 or 83, and he'd had a mild heart attack. And the premium for him to be covered for any heart conditions was $22,000 for the premium. So he said, just leave me there. And we went. But the other element that I think is really, really important, especially in this day and age, is the cancellation insurance. The world is a pretty volatile place. And if you decide to go somewhere and you have issues with, wars raging or whatever the case, you want to make sure you have cancellation insurance, and you want to read that very, detailed. So most cancellation insurance will cover you for reasons that they have. So for example, if the airline goes out of business, if something cancels, whatever, for reasons that are not necessarily yours, you will be covered. And if you're on your trip, usually you're covered for the balance. If you decide, well, I just don't want to go, then you may have a problem. I use To Go, which is something that you guys provide, actually. It's just easy for us to get. They also provide a cancel for any reason insurance. So the premium is about half of the normal premium. So you add that on, and then you can wake up one day and say, I don't want to go.
The other point in this is when we go back to the original thing, when you said travel before retirement, some people get medical things that just don't allow them to travel anymore.
Yeah, true.
And, if you have your bucket list and you're going to wait to hit those when you're 70 years old, there's always a chance you're not going to be either insurable or physically capable of doing that.
Hey, I was standing in the Valley of the Kings just a couple of weeks ago, and there were two guys who were fairly heavy. They had walking issues, and they could not do any of the tombs. They couldn't go in. So they were literally just waiting outside for their family to return, and they missed a lot of it. So that's the kind of stuff you want to do when you can.
And you got to remember too, it's a couple. That's what people tend to forget about. There's two people, right?
Absolutely.
And if one isn't traveling, generally speaking, the one's not traveling either. So it goes together. People don't realize that when you're dealing with this, you need two healthy people. I always tell people, I've dealt with clients for close to 35 years now, and I've had lots of people run out of health. I've had no one run out of money.
Yeah.
People's main concern is always to me, they come and see me, I'm really worried about running out of money.
Yeah.
Just doesn't happen. But many times people get a health issue that stops them from doing everything they intended to do in retirement.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I mean, I've had the pleasure of going to places like Sri Lanka and Africa and so forth. So if something happens health-wise and I can't do those sort of things, I can always, fly over to London or to a European city, that sort of thing. Or push comes to shove, I can go to the U.S., although put that on the back burner for
on
now.
Things to do later on.
And also, don't forget, we live in a great country too. It's very important to see Canada as well.
Yeah. I know you went to see the polar bears, and you've done some.
Yeah, we went to Churchill, saw the polar bears. I've been to Prince George. I've been up to Tiuktuk. I've had the pleasure of going to all 10 provinces, all 3 territories. So, and every country in Europe too. So
that's fantastic.
The bucket list is really drinking.
Financially, how do you deal with trips?
Invest with TMFG.
Obviously.
It says that right here.
Yes.
I mean, you have to have the money to travel, and traveling is not cheap anymore. I think if you can get 2 people to go for 2 weeks for less than $15,000, you're laughing. The key is to sort of plan out where you want to go, what level of travel you want to do. It's great to fly business class, but you have to pay the price for that. So you have to have sort of a budget. We know exactly what we spend on travel per year. We budget that. And if we don't have that kind of money, then we have to cut back our trip.
Yeah.
Because you have to eat, you have to stay in hotels. And the level of hotels is very important. If you're in India, for example, you don't want to stay in a 2-star hotel. You just don't want to.
I see, because I'm usually doing the budgets with people as they do trips. And it's very hard because people always ask me this question. And it's such a broad range. I have people doing trips that cost, 2 weeks between $5,000 and $250,000. It's insane what you can spend on trips. And people do it, And if they have the money, they should be doing it. If that's what they enjoy and if that's what you love and that's your passion and you want to go and see those experiences, yeah, sure.
Absolutely. I mean, it really depends on your own personal goals and lifestyle. If you want to leave all your money to your children, that's fine. I respect that. And that's great. If you want to live your life while you're alive, I respect that too. But financially, that's where you come in, right?
I always say people worry about budgets, but people tend to spend a little bit around the markets, which means we've had good markets for the last few years, and I'm getting a lot of nicer and more exotic trips coming in.
Yeah.
But when things start to shrink down and you go through a bad marketplace, the first thing comes off, travel gets reduced quite quickly.
Yeah. I guess it has to, depending on how much money you have coming in. I mean, we do try and live by that 4% rule at 65 to take no more than 4% of your investment out and kind of budget on that. It depends on what stage you're at in your life and how much money you have to spend.
Well, I think it's a bit of a guilt thing too. if people had a really good year and made a lot of money, they don't feel guilty spending a bunch of money. If you didn't make money in a year, there's a bit of guilt associated with having to do this because it feels like a luxury to them, right?
Yeah, I've never had that myself. But I get exactly what you mean, but no, I live to travel.
So after going to all these different places, do you like coming back home afterwards, or how does it feel?
Well, I certainly like coming back home. I'd be good to come home for a week or two and then hit the road again, but you have to be realistic too. For me, I take a lot of photographs, I take videos, I put them into some sort of a show on YouTube. Now, the photos, I work on them. It takes me about 2 months to kind of unplan or ungroup all that stuff. And then it's time to start planning the next trip.
You do great documentaries in all these places you go to. Do you take notes when you're
I do because,
on it?
yeah, we always travel with a guide in a car, right?
Yeah.
We don't do the group thing. My social skills don't allow me to go with groups. So I've got lots of time in a car to make the notes, and I just take an iPad with me. I usually talk it in as we're going. But because we plan the itinerary, we know exactly what we're going to see and do.
Yeah.
So it's pretty easy to do.
Yeah. My wife loves to travel. I'm not as big of a traveler, so we compromise.
Right.
And we travel.
Yeah, I think we do the same reverse, but yeah, we do the same.
So either way, we're doing a bunch of traveling.
But I think traveling also gives you some real life experiences. I think it gives you an appreciation for what you have here. I remember coming back from India, I did a presentation at a high school, and I said, I think every high school student should have an opportunity to go to India for 3 weeks, and they'll never complain about all the problems we have here.
Where do you get your influences? What makes somewhere stand out that you're, all of a sudden one year you go, I want to see this place. Do you watch National Geographic, or is it a movie that you watch or something like that?
Well, it gets more difficult. And at the risk of sounding a little pompous, there's not a whole lot of places left that are calling me that we haven't been to. Because a lot of times you go back to a place and it's just not the same. The memory is great, but when you get there, the memory has increased and the destination has decreased a bit.
Yeah.
Like I remember the first time I went to Paris, I think it was in the 1970s, and it was great. It was the Paris of Jack Lemmon those days and that. And then the last time we went 4 or 5 years ago, they had a fence around the Eiffel Tower. They had the people panhandling everywhere. It was just not the same.
Yeah, I remember my sister she watched that movie about Bruges. There was a good movie about Bruges.
I did see that.
And she saw that movie, and for the next 5 years, all she wanted to do is go to Bruges.
Yeah.
And she finally went, and she said she wasn't disappointed because I guess it's a beautiful place to go.
It's gorgeous. It is beautiful,
to go.
yeah.
And she watched the movie and said, I have to be there. And she went to do that trip. But I guess whatever goes and gives it influence.
There's certainly that. I mean, Egypt has always been the one country that we've said we wanted to return to because the archaeological aspect and the history is fantastic. We started watching a show a year or two ago called Escape to the Country, it's a British show where people primarily from the London area decide to buy a country home in one of the little counties or whatever. We started watching it, and they're walking through these little thatch roof villages and stuff, and stopping at a bakery and stopping at a pub and stuff like that. I thought, well, that'd be great. So we started thinking about that, and that's where we're going next.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what we're doing, is all the little villages. So the influence comes from many different places. Sri Lanka was never on the bucket list. It was never in the foreground of my mind. But my wife had a friend from there who just raved about it, and we started looking into it. And next thing you know, wow, this is a really interesting place.
How do you deal with the different type of foods? That's a big thing with travel. Some people travel for food.
Yeah.
I watch people that actually go to their destinations are based on food. Many people in Europe are going for wine, things like that. How do you deal with that sort of stuff? I know you eat more. I know your wife is a bit more of a
conservative eater,
more of an Irish type of
mean potatoes.
Yeah,
I'm not a big foodie when I travel because the risk of getting sick is great, depending on where you go. And that's why cruising has been such a successful venture in the last dozen or so years. Take out the COVID element, obviously. But the food is pretty consistent. It's pretty reliable on a cruise ship. And I can't speak a lot to it because I've never been on a cruise ship, but not a big fan of street food. I usually always eat breakfast in the hotels.
So you're safe there always,
yeah,
right?
And dinner's like a hotel restaurant is a new experience for me if I've never been there before in a new country.
Yeah.
So for me to walk down the street to get the local food and that kind of stuff, I'm beyond that now because the health element is more important to me, especially since COVID. And I don't take a lot of risks. I've only ever been sick once in my entire travel life.
That's great. Out of 107 countries, that's fantastic.
And that was in Mexico. And I bit into a hamburger, and halfway through I realized it was red inside.
Yeah.
And the next day, sure enough, a lot of soda water, and I got out of it after 4 or 5 hours. It was fine, but it's just not worth the risk.
Let's talk about someone who's approaching retirement now. So, as you mentioned, one thing is they should start to do the list, or even before approaching retirement, you should start to make your
Oh, yeah.
bucket list of where you want to go.
Make the list as soon as you get married, as soon as you're like 30 years old, whatever. Make the list.
Have a list done. And I guess start putting ages by it on what age you wanted to do this.
And why you want to go.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like a lot of people, oh, yeah, I want to go to Berlin. Well, why? Because, So do some research as to where you want to go, and learn a lot about it. Like if you're going to Antarctica, it's a fantastic trip, but you've got to do the Drake Passage.
Yeah.
And that's usually, 5 or 6 hours of being quite sick.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people don't overcome that. In fact, I had lunch with somebody the other day. They just did the Antarctica thing and they had a patch, which they wore for the first time.
Yeah.
And they got back and from Ushuaia flew up to Buenos Aires. He took the patch off and he started getting really, really sick. And it turns out he had a reaction to the patch.
What have you read to avoid situations like that? Did you use any of these travel guides?
Yeah, I always used, before the internet, I definitely used travel books. And at that time, when you're younger, things aren't as important. Like the beautiful hotels were not as important. The luxury, I didn't mind walking 4 flights of stairs,
Yeah.
The internet has certainly helped a lot with that. I'm a big fan of AI for many reasons, not for planning things down to the detail, because as you say, they are wrong sometimes. But I think when people start to plan their trips and that, they use AI and then dig into it. Everybody has a website. Every hotel has a website. And I always assume that these places put the best possible pictures on the website.
For me, planning things like that is stressful.
Oh, really?
I don't know why. It's just how my personality works. And I travel with my son a lot. My son's very good at that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just give him the stuff and all of a sudden he'll come back. He'll have all Airbnbs booked. And he's 22 years old. So they say, okay, here's where we're going. We're going to stay in this place.
Yep.
And they're very competent at using all the technology is very easy for them to do. They'll have all the reservations for the hotel set up 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
I'll get everything taken care of. And it makes it a very relaxing trip because I don't have to do anything.
We don't usually travel with other people because, as I said before, my personality doesn't lend itself to being sociable. But also, I don't want to compromise. The kind of travel that we do, it's more of an adventure type travel. So I don't want to necessarily compromise. So we do it all ourselves. And then if there's something wrong, I only have myself to blame.
Yeah, that's true.
And usually we've never really had issues. We've had things that come up, but we've never really had anything that's major.
I know you get guides and serve taxis and tour. How do you find those people?
There's a company out of Slovenia, I believe it's called Liberty Travel, and they look after a guide network around the world. Or you could just go online. So if you want to do a personal guide in the UK, you can just, Guide for Hire, I think is one. There's so many sites. And they'll give you like a half a dozen people for the certain area. You just reach out to each of them, get a feel for it. And that's what we did in this particular case. We reached out to half a dozen guides and they came back first, of course, to come back with the day rate. And then you narrow it down. And one lady that we thought was really great, I said to her, will you be able to pick us up at Heathrow? And she said, oh, well, I don't have a car. I could come up by train. I said, well, what? You're going to drive us around. You don't have a car. So her plan was to take us by bus.
Yeah.
And that's not going to happen. So you kind of weeded down, and we were down to 2 or 3 people, and we settled with one person who just, I talked to him on WhatsApp, which is a great opportunity to chat with people anywhere in the world, and got a good feel for it. So,
what do you do for cash? Do you get usually the local currency, or do most people take Visa, or what have you found?
I think everybody in the world takes plastic. I'm always shocked, but going through, and Egypt is fresh in my mind because, as I say, we just came back. I took 150 Egyptian pounds, which is like maybe $100 or so. I forget what the rate is. A little bit of US money, maybe $100, and the rest I used my watch, and I just tapped everywhere.
That's fantastic.
It was great. And a lot of countries don't expect tipping, which is even better.
Yeah. I always travel with a few $100 US in my pocket just in case.
Absolutely.
I think US sort of is the international currency of last resort, right?
Although I think in Egypt, actually, we took euros. If you have a credit card, be careful that you don't lose it. That's why I'm a big proponent of using either an Apple Watch or a phone to tap with, because if you lose your credit card, somebody can tap till the cows come home. If you lose your phone, it's encrypted. They can't use it. Same with your watch, right? It's synced to you. But I've seen people get pickpocketed in places here and there, and that's a big thing around the world. Pickpocketing crime is big everywhere. You just have to really be careful. Don't wear a lot of jewelry. There's a movie from the 1960s, I think, with Marlon Brando called The Ugly American. Yeah. And it deals with travel and that. And just go to enjoy the place. Yeah. Rather than try and change it or get upset because it's not to your liking.
And being in all these countries, you must speak tons of languages.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I speak Dutch, I speak Irish and English.
That's about it. You're one more than I am, so.
And a little bit of German, 2 words of French, but the whole world speaks English. So it's really not a problem.
Yeah, it does make it a lot easier. However, I went to the middle of Brazil, and it's the first place I've ever been where no one speaks English.
Is that right?
And it was because it wasn't a tourist town. I came up through the middle of South America, And it was sort of odd because they didn't even know the word yes or no.
Yeah,
And it was
really?
very odd because, as you said, everywhere else I've traveled,
Yeah.
if you speak English, there's always someone who will be willing to
Yeah.
speak with you.
It's like going to Quebec. We were in South Korea a couple of years ago, and just after the pandemic, and I was in a Starbucks because there's a Starbucks on every street corner.
Yeah.
And I wanted to order something, but the lady spoke no English whatsoever. So she takes the phone out of my hand and she types it in and pushes some app that came with the phone that I didn't even know about. And suddenly it translates it.
Yeah, there's amazing. I mean, technology, when we talk about all the different pieces of technology, from AI helping you out with planning routes to the translators are in there.
Absolutely.
And to using the Apple Pay to go and pay for it. And it's pretty amazing how technology has made travel a lot easier.
A lot different. I'm not sure if it's easier.
Yeah, the airports are still, I find most people that are older, the airport adds so much stress.
Yeah, it can
take them away from it.
Yeah, there's also the element of travel agents. And depending on your level of travel, your level of comfort with it, travel agents are great if you want somebody to take care of stuff for you. Yeah. And you don't have to worry about the flights and that, There's so many things, like you can choose your seats for a couple $100. You can choose a seat for a few $100 more. You can take a suitcase with you. There are a lot of expenses, but travel agents kind of put all that together for you.
I've started to use book individually through the airlines. I used to use all the different apps to book, and I realized, number one, you're missing out on points. Number two, you don't get any loyalty.
Absolutely. And same with hotels, especially hotels. The hotel has to pay a premium to the Expedias of the world. Yeah. And if you book direct with them, it's much more appreciated. And it's easier to get like little upgrades and things like that. Yeah.
I know whenever you go through that one, you enter the handicap room and it's you're by the bathroom on the flights. And when you book directly, you have a bit more pull with both the hotels and the airline. And the price difference isn't there anymore.
It's not.
It was so much cheaper to use one of these Expedia type things. Yeah. Nowadays, I look at the price of Expedia, I go directly. Yeah. No real difference in the price.
Yeah. And you really have to look at the pricing too, because I was looking at an Air Canada flight that was, I forget what it was, about $1,500. And it included a suitcase and it included your seat selection. And I looked at a British Airways flight that was $900, and your seat selection was like $150 per seat per trip. Your suitcase was $75 or something, whatever it was. And at the end of the day, they were within $20 of each other.
Finally, John, what would you say to someone who keeps on putting off the travel and says, we'll do it later? What would be your advice to them?
I think it's a pretty obvious answer. Why would you wait to put things off? Unless, as I mentioned before, health and finances. But if you have both those in your favor, why would you put it off? Yeah. The world is changing. It's not getting better. So if you want to see things, go and see them. Plain and simple.
I never heard anyone regret where they've traveled to on their deathbed, Exactly. I've never heard anyone say, I wish I bought that Ferrari, but you do hear people say, I'm glad I've traveled all throughout the world.
Oh, absolutely. And I always think of the story of people that we knew. This is a number about 20 years ago. Their dream had always been to go back to Saskatchewan. They were originally from that. And when he retired, they were going to Saskatchewan, and he retired. And the next day he had a heart attack and died and never saw Saskatchewan again. Yeah. So, what's the old saying? Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow you may die.
This is John's book. I went through this. The pictures are phenomenal.
Thank you.
I'm number one, blown away by all the different places you've went. And in addition to that, all the photographs capture those places with immense clarity and give you a real feel toward the people. And if you're into the wildlife that's there, and just even the visuals that you get from going to places like, we talk about a place like Bruges. Right. You see pictures of it and you're like, oh God, that's a stunning place, right?
The book started as a reference for myself. I just started to list my favorite places. So I ended up with 155 of them, which ended up being 320 pages, 600 pictures, 70 some odd thousand words. And then there it is.
Fantastic. Well, John, really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with us. It's just great to see. I love to see people that have retired and that we've worked with over the years have hit retirement and enjoy what they do. Remember, you only retire from things you don't like doing. So essentially, I've heard that before, and people like yourself, when they have a passion and love, they never really need to retire from it. And it's great to see.
Life's not a dress rehearsal.
And for those listening, if you're wondering how to structure your retirement so you have that kind of flexibility and control to travel and support the lifestyle you really want to achieve, those kinds of conversations are what we have with clients every day. So if you want to learn more about TMFG, check the show notes and details on how to connect with us. You can reach us at 905-771-5200 or visit our website at tmfg.ca. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, and we'll do our best to address them in a future episode. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Think Smart with TMFG with Mike Connon of the McClellan Financial Group of CI Asante Wealth Management. Don't forget to subscribe to Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube Music, and leave us a review. For more insights and resources, visit tmfg.ca or follow the link in the episode description. This program was prepared by Michael Connon, Senior Financial Advisor with CI Asante Wealth Management Limited. This is not an official program of CI Asante Wealth Management Limited, and the statements and opinions expressed during this podcast are not necessarily those of CI Asante Wealth Management Limited. CI Asante Wealth Management Limited is a member of the Canadian Investor Protection Fund and the Canadian Investment Regulatory Organization. This show is intended for general information only and may not apply to all listeners or investors. Please obtain professional financial advice by contacting us at 905-771-5200 or visit tmfg.ca to discuss your personal circumstances before acting on any information presented.